Vito got it.
I did too. I just wanted you to say it as we were starting to record. Hello, good evening, and welcome along to the latest Forza Italian Football Podcast. As ever, I am your host, Conor Clancy, and I've got the two usuals joining me, unfortunately. Vito, I'm happy to see you. Welcome along, and it's good to speak to you.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's always good speaking with you, Conor, and even with Kev too. But yeah, just good to always have the regular team. And we got that familiarity. Just downside, I think with this shirt though, I probably should have worn black this week. And as we delve into the results, I think we can all work out why.
Did you notice the reluctance in his voice there, Kev, as he was saying, "Oh, and even speaking to Kev,"
because you hadn't introduced him.
After the hospitality I showed him in Liverpool at the start of the season as well.
I should say I'm also joined by Kev. How are you, mate?
I'm wearing black, Conor.
Who?
You?
No, I'm not.
Are you not?
No, it's navy blue.
I wondered if you were in mourning for Samp as well, but
I'm in mourning for Roma's Champions League aspirations, and that's about it, to be honest. But the less said about that, the better for now. Guys, we have quite a big pod this week. Two very big results, big games took place. The first of them has just finished, about an hour ago. Lazio welcomed Inter to the Stadio Olimpico in Rome. They went 1-0 down. It didn't matter. They came from 1-0 down to win 2-1. And Kev, they're going to win the league.
They could well do. Yeah, I think they're certainly in the race, and I think it's brilliant that we've got a free team Scudetto race this year. I think if Inter had won, then it obviously would have put a gap that you wouldn't really want to see. Maybe a draw would also have kept all three teams in it. But I think probably for the race, just the race itself, a Lazio win was ideal, really.
Yeah, I think somebody needed to win. I was hoping throughout the game that it didn't end in a draw. I didn't really mind who won, but I very much wanted someone to take all 3 points, because Juve just getting that little bit of ground would kind of just make you think about everything that's happened over the last 8 years. But Vito, how impressed were you by Lazio? Because we've said a few times on this podcast that they keep finding different ways to win, and they've done exactly that again.
They did, and they were trailing at half time, so it's good to be able to turn a game around, especially when it's against one of the teams that you're competing with for the Serie A title. They did need the penalty to get that equaliser, but I think in the circumstances it was well-deserved to get both goals. Immobile could have made it 3-1 near the end as well, but Padelli saved his chip. And as I was saying on Twitter with a follower of mine, that probably this game, I think Lazio needed to win it more than Inter, because this would have been a real confidence booster. And regardless that it was in Rome, or even if the game had been played in Milan, I think Lazio winning in general, I think it's beneficial for them. And I reckon to beat a team like Inter, who've been playing like they have this season, I think it's it gives them a real boost and that real belief that they can probably challenge for that third league title in their history.
Yeah, you would imagine so, right? But Kev, Lazio are now unbeaten in 19 Serie A games. I mean, that's a ridiculous record.
Oh, yeah, it's a ridiculous level of consistency. But with how Juventus have been over the last few seasons, you're kind of almost forced into having to condition yourself to go on a run like this to challenge them. And I think Vito touched on the timing of the Inter goal. I think that tonight was a huge plus for Lazio, because it was just before half time, when they were much the better side in the first half. They certainly started the opening moments of the game really positively, and it would have probably, crushed maybe too strong a word, but it certainly would have been difficult for other sides to come back from that.
Of course, Inter were on quite a good unbeaten run themselves as well before this evening, and Inter and Lazio actually had, before this weekend, two of the three longest unbeaten runs in Europe's top 5 leagues. Kev, I'm sure you know who the other team is with the longer of those runs, but I've got to talk to Alasdair Mackenzie because we've spoken to him a few times this week. He made me a promise last week, which was if Lazio went and beat Inter, we could have a serious talk about their title credentials. So I am now joined on the line by Alasdair Mackenzie, and I'm going to ask him about exactly that. Those of you watching on YouTube don't get treated to that. Sorry, guys. So go download the audio, and then you can hear what Big Al has to say from the Olimpico. He's very, very excited. Bless him. Kev, I'll stick with you because Ashley Young gave Inter the lead, right? And I don't think anyone will have seen this coming. And I've got a quiz question for you. Ashley Young was the first English player to score against Lazio in the top flight since who?
Since David Platt in 1995.
You've been reading Opta tonight, I see.
I saw the tweet come in as I was watching the game, yeah. It was for Stamp, wasn't it? It wasn't for Juve or Bari. It was for...
Yeah, it was for Sampdoria, yeah. Good memory. Let's just pretend you remembered the 25-year.
Yeah.
But no, we've got to talk about Inter, though, on a serious note, because Vito, Young did give them the lead, but they went and blew it and lost. And I asked last week about potential questions still hanging over this team. To lose the lead like that in a game this important, problematic.
It's not ideal. Trailing at half-time last week in the derby was bad enough, but to lose to someone who is a total rival of yours, it's not convenient. And also, from that perspective, the Nerazzurri got to assess their total credentials. If they are serious of really pushing Juve for that title, as well as Lazio, then they needed to beat the Biancocelesti. In this case, it's more a matter of getting a consistent run of results from now on in, and that's probably going to hold them in good stead from now on. Otherwise, if they base it on individual games and stuff, that might be a further cause for another slump, perhaps.
I think it's an easier defeat to shake off because you have been beaten by a side that is arguably played better than you this season and, also in this title race. I think if they'd lost last week or, even maybe drawn against Milan, that, and then obviously lost this game, would have been maybe the nail in their title challenge. Whereas I think they'll sort of see this as they've gone away to someone that's in the title race with them, a side that's, shown a level of consistency that they've certainly not shown for a number of years. And they'll get back to maybe winning ways or at least get back on track next week.
Yeah, I take your point, but having said that, they still, if you offered them, right, you're going to lose one of these games, they'd have taken a defeat against Milan any day of the week because losing to Milan isn't it's not that 6-point swing. But yeah, it's big, this defeat, I think. But Kev, do you reckon Antonio Conte is flexible enough to win the Scudetto with this Inter team? Because he very much has his players and he has his setup, and that's what he does.
Yeah, well, in Italian football, that's very much what we've seen from Conte. At Juve, it was very much the same formation, and he needed the players, he needed the square pegs for the square holes, if you like, to suit the formation that he wanted to play. We did see some tactical flexibility from him when he kind of moved his chess pieces around a little bit at Chelsea, but he does seem ever so rigidly stuck to the formation that he wants to play. Yeah,
I don't know. One of the things that surprised me about tonight was that Diego Godin started, Vito, and I know you're a real ambassador for young Italian talent, and they've got Alessandro Bastoni, who, when he's played this season, you could make the case that he's been better than Godin. He's been more reliable. He offers more on the ball, and he's more mobile. And should he be now starting ahead of Godin despite the experience that the former Atletico Madrid player has?
It's come to the point that he needs to start ahead of Godin. Bastoni, I think he's been more composed, and definitely when he plays the ball out from the back, he can pick the right passes, and he's also very comfortable dribbling the ball too. So he had something a bit different to the Inter defence. Godin, he's featured probably 2 or 3 times in both Vieri's team of the week and then my team of the week. But I think this season, between his good and bad, there's been a huge gap. There have been games where he's defended well, but quite a few games he's looked like he's not necessarily out of his depth, but his awareness and reactions haven't been up to scratch. So I think for the long term, Bastoni is a much better option. And even in the present, I think it would be more worthwhile to use Bastoni because he is good at both defending and distributing the ball from defence.
Kev, Daniele Padelli had a bit of a shocker again for Lazio's first goal, the penalty that was given in particular. He kind of ventured out when he didn't really need to and got caught in no man's land. And another sign that they're missing their goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a piece on Handanovic's importance to the side in the certainly in the first half of the derby last week. And you can moan about the mistakes of Padelli, but it's not even as if they're bad mistakes. They're his level. They're what you're going to always run the risk of him making a couple of errors of judgment. If you've got that level of sort of backup for you, even in the week, did they actually eventually sign Emiliano Viviano?
No.
Because there was talk of signing him because he's out of contract because they clearly didn't trust Padelli. And you think he's come in for a couple of games. You must have known at the start of the season that you were in a difficult position if you did lose your first choice goalkeeper, and then you're either going to rely on this person that is not good enough to be a goalkeeper for someone's challenging for a title, or that you were going to go to this market where you're looking at out of contract players.
Yeah, well, they should have signed Viviano. Viviano's a better goalkeeper than Padelli is. Vito will know. He will have seen him play for Samp, and he's always, I don't know, I've never quite fully trusted Viviano, but I would definitely play him in goal of any team ahead of Daniele Padelli, whatever year it is. But I think that's enough on Inter because we've spoken quite a lot about them throughout the season and today. So I think we can move on. Juve are top again. I was going to say they stayed top. They weren't technically top, but they are now. They beat Brescia 2-0. And Vito, this is just kind of getting back to normal procedure. Paulo Dybala worked a little bit of magic for the opener.
He did. It was a lovely free kick by him, and fantastic technique on his part. And it goes to show when you don't have Cristiano Ronaldo on free kicks, the free kick will probably go in. Not only that, just in general, Juve did decide to rest Ronaldo, and I think Maurizio Sarri was rewarded with Dybala starting, and Dybala himself probably could have added a few more goals to this win as well.
What do you think about the decision, Kev, to rest Cristiano Ronaldo?
Well, interestingly, I only caught the highlights of this game, and I didn't notice he was playing. So maybe that supports Sarri's decision not to play him. Sort of Dybala was the person that seemed to be everywhere, like he has several times this year. Really, he seemed to have shown a desire to sort of get on the ball, be that sort of game changer for Juve. Maybe after there were talks of him moving away when they were sort of trying to trim their squad. But it was just an interesting decision, just from on the basis that Juve don't play their Champions League game until the 26th, I think. At the earliest, it's 25th of February. So it's not as if they're playing this midweek in the Champions League.
Yeah, it's a strange one, especially because it's Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And we know he doesn't like not playing games, but something huge did happen in this game with Paulo Dybala, and I've got Dov Schiavone from Turin joining me to talk about that. YouTube people, you really need to just download the podcast because you're missing out on a lot of stuff this week. Sorry. Some good news, though, for Juve, Vito, is that Giorgio Chiellini returned. He got injured in the first game of the season here in Parma. He's not played since, but he came off the bench for his pal, Leonardo Bonucci, and he took the captain's armband back. How big of a boost is this coming into the final stretch of the season?
Oh, this is an absolutely massive boost for Juve. Although he has become an injury-prone player, I don't think you can have any doubts about the tenacity that Chiellini has, the experience he brings, and just what a fantastic defender that he has been for more than a decade. I think it will help Bonucci to have his old sidekick there too. And even for De Ligt, even if he's not starting games from now on in, I think De Ligt can still learn a lot from Chiellini and the way he defends. So to have Chiellini there, I think he'll give more confidence to Juve. I think the defense in general will be better protected. But even I think having him there just gives that security at the back. And then for the rest of the team, I think it all just folds into place. I think everyone else from the midfield to attack, they'll just get that additional boost because he's just such a key player for them.
I moved on too quickly there, Kev. The whole thing about the Juve fans booing their team, what do you make of this? Because they've won the Scudetto for the last 8 years. They won the Coppa Italia as well. What was it, 3 years in a row? So they've won basically everything. And they were still top of the league, and their fans are booing them. I mean, it's a strange way to go about things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it shows the level of your fan base where you have that sort of that unprecedented success for so long, and you almost have unrealistic expectations. You wonder whether, particularly how, if you look at how Juventus have moved as this sort of club that commercializes every aspect of their brand. You've seen this in with other top clubs across Europe, where they almost price out the older fan. Shall we maybe say the fan that's seen the hard times and has more patience, and then you bring in these people that are paying top dollar, top euro to go along to the stadium, and then feel like that they can boo because they've only won 2-0, or that they're only a point ahead in the Scudetto race. And I think it's a move towards that more generally across lots of what you call, I say, huge sides in Europe.
I've never heard anyone say top euro before. You can say top.
I wanted to keep it European.
That's a big deal for you in Portugal.
Well, we don't have to. You don't have to Americanize everything.
All right. Kev, Brescia done?
Yeah, I think so. We'll touch on SPAL later, but I think both them and SPAL are done. I mean, they haven't won since we came back from the Christmas period. They don't. The thing is, they don't look. They've got the talent to win a game, but they don't look like they're going to go on a run like potentially Genoa have done in the last couple of weeks and actually amass enough points to save themselves. So yeah, I would say that they're done.
You agree with that, Vito?
Oh, definitely. There's only so much Sandro Tonali can do in midfield, and we've said this about Mario Balotelli for many years, that he's got so much potential, so much raw talent, but he's rarely made it shine often enough or to put it in a good run. Brescia needs someone with his mercurial talent to take the game on, turn games around and win it off his own boot, but he's only scored sporadically, and as much as I've been impressed with Ernesto Torregrossa, I think he doesn't score enough, and Alfredo Donnarumma, when he's been available, he hasn't made much of an impact except for that hat-trick he scored early in the season. So I'm not convinced that they can turn things around at all.
Said last week, Kev, that Atalanta had recorded the most number of points from losing position since Gasperini took over. It was 68. Now it's 71. because they did what they do. Again, Roma went up to Bergamo and they went 1-0 up. Jose Luis Palomino basically gave Roma the advantage. That was clearly a tactical decision, by the way. Atalanta were fighting a breakthrough, so they knew they needed to go behind, so Palomino let them in. And then Atalanta came out in the second half and turned things on their head, and they won 2-1 to get a 6-point lead over Roma, which is effectively a 7-point lead because they've got the head-to-head advantage as well. And Kev, they're looking good.
Yeah, and Atalanta are looking. I think we were talking last week about them cementing fourth place. As you sort of alluded to there, maybe they shouldn't have gone behind this week. But if that was tactical, then it was another stroke of genius from either Palomino or Gasperini. Yeah, they'll always score goals. In truth, Roma didn't really look in this at times. And then somewhat in freefall.
Yeah, well, we had Al on last week talking about Roma's problems and their crisis. But yeah, Vito's just pointed out the pass that Hateboer played to Palomino in that position. I mean, Palomino's under pressure and Hateboer thumps one at him. Just like, yeah, deal with that, mate. It was unbelievable. It's like what Roy Keane says the players at Manchester United used to do. They got a new boy in and they were playing in the squares, where there's two in the middle, and they deliberately thump the ball at the new player, basically to make him miscontrol it and then put him in the middle for ages. But it was strange. However, I do think that if Atalanta didn't go behind, they wouldn't have won. I watched the first half of this game in Bologna and then the second half on the train home. And I was sitting in a bar in Bologna and I said to my mate that I kind of want Roma to score because Atalanta so often don't play until they actually have to go and play. And they were like, what are you talking about? Are you okay? I was explaining it and it's like, look, they always come from behind and blah, 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 blah. Sure enough, they did it again. So they've got 45 points already this season. 19 of those have come from a trailing position. I mean, that's a phenomenal record. I don't really know how you train yourself to do that. Vito, is it just a mentality thing?
I would personally address it as a mentality thing because it's something that's happened repeatedly so often. The way Atalanta play, they can't play in a defensive way or just get an early lead or shut shop. Gasperini doesn't coach that way and the team's not drilled to do so. So in that instance, you've got to find different ways to win. And regardless of how many goals you're trailing by, Atalanta's style, I reckon, is also made for comebacks. You can play at that high tempo, and because you're going to keep persisting until you get the goals, that way Atalanta do in turn get the rewards that they want and deserve.
I'm intrigued, Connor. At what point would you not want Atalanta to go behind?
Last
the 70th minute?
80.
The 75th minute?
80.
80, and they then get 2 to win the game.
I'd fancy them. Have you seen them play?
We might test this theory.
How are we going to test this?
It'll be 0-0. It'll be 0-0. You'll be playing, let's say, Bologna away from home. And I'll be barraging you with tweets asking if you want Atalanta to concede. I don't know.
I'm not going to respond.
I'll troll you. I'll troll you now for the rest of the season.
I'll block you on Twitter. I'll block your phone. I'll block you, Kev. Just out of my life. You'll only have Slack, and I'll turn notifications off on that. But no, that 19 points from trailing positions is the best in Europe's top 5 leagues. And something else that they're better at than anyone else is having got substitutes come on and score. They've got 12 goals from substitutes this season, which is the best in Europe, in Europe's top 5 leagues. And Mario Pasalic did it this week. He walked onto the pitch, basically walked into the box, got the ball and put one in the top corner on a postage stamp. Vito, Gasperini's magic touch again.
Yeah. Oh, it's an incredible substitution, and yeah, certainly one for the record books. But I suppose that's what Gasperini can do with that team. So just it's nice that Pasalic could come on, score goals like that. And it was a fabulous finish too. Nice curling shot. No, I don't want to compare him to, say, an Alessandro Del Piero or Roberto Baggio, but that type of curling shot, that's that's the kind of stuff that they were used to doing. And good on Pasalic for scoring the win in that style. It's a good thing to score a winner, but when it's a beautiful winner, it just adds that extra gloss to the win and makes it more special. I'm
going to have to let people behind the curtain here, and I shouldn't have to do this, but you two, you're two snakes, all right? Stop this. What's going on in the Skype chat conversation behind our listeners' backs? It's disgraceful. Carry on, and I'll block you too, Vito. Okay, and I'll block you on Skype as well, and that'll be the end of the two on the podcast.
Mutiny amongst the ranks.
It's absolutely scandalous.
It's the bands.
It's not bands if it's not for the listeners. I can't be dealing with this. Okay. It's just bullying then. Kev, back to the goal. Something that was overlooked remarkably was the little birthday boy, little Papu. He nutmegged Chris Smalling with a pass from about 4 yards away. And it was just so magical.
Yeah, well, hopefully, because I've been quite impressed with Smalling, but since he had a wonderful game against Lazio in the derby, he's had a little bit of a mare. He left the pass for I think it was Orsolini to put Bologna in front the other week, and that's a bit of Papu genius. There's a bit of gangly-legged Smalling leaving himself open to it.
Oh, come on, just give the birthday boy his praise.
Okay, all Papu, as it was his birthday.
And Chris Smalling was actually very good in the first half, to be fair. He had a solid 45 minutes, and then we've seen Atalanta tear teams apart often enough to know that sometimes they're just quite difficult to manage, which takes us on to midweek. We won't spend too long on it because they host Valencia at the San Siro on Wednesday evening. And Valencia are basically missing all of their defenders. I think Alessandro Florenzi's fit to play, which will come as music to Papu's ears. Do you fancy their chances in this, Kev?
Did you see Florenzi's red card?
Yeah.
I've always doubted whether he should play fullback anyway. And I think Gasperini has got to be sort of focusing on that as a weakness for Valencia, as well as the other omissions they've got from the defensive area, and you just go at them because it's unheard of really at that elite level of European football that someone will come back from a big deficit, and Atalanta could potentially have a 3 or 4 goal lead going into the second leg if they just sort of hit them as we know they can. Steady. Come on. I think they can.
I need to be able to breathe for the rest of this podcast. Don't start saying things like that to me. We're on air. Remember that. Vito, any thoughts on this game?
Look, I do fancy Atalanta's chances. I wouldn't pick a big scoreline or anything like that, largely because, it's still Atalanta's first season, so you can't expect them to just roll over teams like they have done in Serie A. But I think after such a poor start in the group stage, Lecce and Genoa have just grown as a squad. They've adapted a bit more, learn a few more things on the way. And I think also to have achieved qualification like they did, especially on the last day, I think that's good for the confidence and also the mindset heading into this round of 16 fixture. It gives them this belief that they can overcome certain circumstances, especially if they're tough. So, again, even if the chips are down, Atalanta, at least in Serie A, have shown that they can turn things around and make sure things go in their way. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do it again against Lecce.
I'm going 3 goals, Vito. We'll have a beer on it.
Right.
3
Sounds
or more,
like a plan.
3 or more. Can you guys relax? But on a serious note, Kev, in a one-off or even across a 2-leg tie, is there anyone in Europe that Atalanta couldn't beat?
Do you want me to say Liverpool?
I think it's Liverpool, but
Jurgen Klopp. Under Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool haven't lost a 2-legged tie
But I think Atalanta could beat them in one of the two legs. But I think Liverpool are the only team that I would actually dread Atalanta playing against.
I suppose we kind of felt a bit like that when the draw was made, that we kind of didn't want the unpredictability of Atalanta. But then also we kind of felt that them not playing at their home stadium would be a leveler if we had drawn each other in the round of 16. But it would be an interesting contest if we both get through. And
I don't want that. I have to wait till the final.
It would be the pod derby.
No, it wouldn't be fun for anyone involved. Well, it might be for you, but I wouldn't enjoy that at all. I'd go AWOL if it happened. Anyway, Napoli kept up their kind of weird form where they win sometimes, and we had Ben at the Sardinia Arena to talk about this. So, sorry, YouTube people. I'm going to go and talk to Ben Hughes about Cagliari Napoli. I was waiting to see if one of you would say something first, but no, not about the game, just to wonder why I hadn't said anything for so long.
I do have a question. As you're the man in Italy from the three of us, and considering that Dries Mertens scored the goal, there was a lot made in the UK media about Mertens not necessarily pulling out, but the deal not getting over the line for him to sign for Chelsea, and a lot of that was him wanting to break this goal scoring record. And I wondered, if there'd been as much talk in Italy about that, or whether you actually think there's any weight to he wants to stick around for, he is now sticking around for this second half of the season and wants to do that.
Well, Mertens loves Napoli, both the city and the club. And to get within touching distance, having surpassed Diego Maradona's record to be, 3 goals off hamshake for a while he was out injured. That's got to be a motivation. To have played for a club that you've grown in love with. The fans are obsessed with you to the extent that they call you Ciro because it's a really popular name down in Napoli. I think that it's quite normal for Mertens to want to stick around. And I think he will. He is staying until the end of the season. He'll break the record, and then maybe he'll be more accepting or more open to listening to offers, because it's quite clear, right, that the club are happy to get rid of him now. And I don't know. I feel bad for him as well, because he clearly wants to stay. It does seem like he's not really being given the choice. So in the summer, I'd kind of expect him to leave. Yeah. And a lot of the reports over here for the last basically 4 months have been about Mertens is going to leave imminently. So I did think he was going to depart in January. He didn't. So I still expect that he'll be off at the next opportunity, but it won't be his decision. Anything else?
No, just interested.
All right. Sassuolo, Parma. The derby in Emilia-Romagna, the big game in Serie A this week, the biggest game. Parma were without players in Luigi Sepe, Dejan Kulusevski and Juraj Kucka, Vito, but they went to Sassuolo. They did what they're so good at doing under Roberto De Versa, which is to just frustrate teams and hit them on the counter-attack, and they left with a 1-0 win.
Yeah, it's become typical of Parma's season, and especially of how they do play under Roberto De Versa, but they'll be more than content with getting the points, and it's good that they do get wins without key personnel, because a team like Parma, they're not anywhere near where they were in the 90s, where they just had an abundance of depth. After recovering like they have in the last few years, I think to get wins like this are still very important and significant in their own way. And then Jhemini, out of all people, he ended up being the hero with the winning goal.
Oh, unbelievable. Considering what's been happening here for the last 2.5 weeks with Jhemini, for him to even be in the squad, I thought was a surprise. Then when I saw him in the 11, I was genuinely a little bit taken aback. And when I saw Cornelius put that ball in, I was thinking, oh no, Gervinho's going to score, and it's just going to finish like this. Gervinho's going to be the hero, and Parma are going to have to start liking this guy again. But it's been crazy. I don't know. Have we spoken about this on the pod?
Not from what I recall.
Right. Well, Gervinho basically wanted a move, and he was close to joining Al Sadd, Xavi's team out in Qatar, and he basically decided that he wasn't going to train because the move fell through. I think FIFA stepped in and said that the move couldn't happen. So Gervinho was sulking, and he just stopped going to training in Calcio. And De Versa was asked about it in the press conference, and he was just like quite open and said, "Look, I don't know where he is. He's not shown up for 3 days. He's not said anything to us. We don't know what he's doing, where he is, what he's thinking, what he wants." And it was quite a strange situation. He ended up going back to Calcio after his little protest and was training miles away from the rest of the team on his own. I say training, I mean like running about a bit. And then it kind of seems like it's not all his fault what's going on there. It seems like the deal that Parma made to sign him in the first place, it's not that it's a shady deal, but it's a little bit of a confusing deal in that there are some questions still hanging over it. So trying to sell him is a little bit more complicated than it would otherwise be. And he's apologized to the fans and to the club. So De Versa's obviously said, okay, right, that's fine. And then he was back in the team today and he scored and he celebrated under the fans, which I thought was quite a brave decision. But they celebrated it. Some of them a little more hesitant to do so than others. You can see in a few of the pictures, actually, that some fans are celebrating it like any other goal, and some fans are kind of just looking at him thinking, well, why are you celebrating in front of us? We don't like you very much. But then he was taken off, and the Parma fans all applauded him quite loudly, which I was surprised by, to be honest. And he made the point of giving them a wave and an applause as he walked off the pitch. But Gervinho, my impression is that Parma still very much want to sell him. So if it's possible, he'll leave tomorrow. So he might still not see out the season in Serie A. But if he does, he's out of here in the summer. There's no way he's sticking about. And to be honest, I think Parma are better off without him. And once Kuchka and Kulusevski are back, he's not going to be in the team anyway, because he hadn't been for a while, because he's not good enough to get in ahead of those guys anyway. But yeah, Gervinho scoring could be the last time we see that in a Parma shirt. Something that I didn't think I'd say is that Luigi Sepe is really important for Parma, and he has improved a lot this season. Last season, basically every other week I slaughtered him. This season, he's not been making mistakes, so I've not really had a reason to. So when he got injured, I was a little bit worried, but Simone Colombi has come in, and he was phenomenal today. He saved everything Ciccio Caputo threw at him. And yeah, he was just really, really good. And maybe there is some hope for Parma, even with their injured players, but who knows? Anyway, let's go down to the bottom, shall we? We kind of hinted at this earlier, Kev, at least you did. Lecce beat SPAL 2-1. They went 1-0 up. Petagna equalised, and then Lecce went on to win it. And it's as big of a win as it is for Lecce, it kind of condemns SPAL.
Yeah, and it wasn't as if sort of Lecce were all over them. You know, both sides had chances. Obviously, Lecce took theirs, but that almost what makes it worse, because they're now so far away from everybody else. Is it 15 points? So they're 10 or 9 from safety. And I spent the sort of latter part of watching the game sort of roll by in the background, thinking just, well, where's Petagna go, because SPAL are down?
Well, he's off to Napoli. He's got that sorted. He's gone to Napoli at the end of the season.
Oh, okay, that passed me by.
It was one of those January ones that slipped in there. But
yeah, like Amrabat, which I missed as well. But
yeah, well, Fiorentina basically signed a whole new team, but none of them are going there until the summer, other than Kouame's there and Duncan's there. But they signed a couple of other players, I think, who are for next season as well. But Yeah, big win for Lecce because they moved 6 points ahead of Genoa, but then Genoa went on to win about an hour later when they went to Bologna and they won 3-0. I didn't see this coming, but something that I also didn't see coming is the word that I'm about to use to describe Genoa's performance. Vito, you're not going to like it, but they were genuinely flawless.
Yeah, it was scary to think that it could be that way. Davide Nicola outcoached Sinisa Mihalovic in this particular game, and the Felsinei absolutely lost their heads in this one. They have improved under Davide Nicola as coach, and it might be too early to say this now, but maybe he could pull off another miraculous escape like he did at Crotone 3 years ago. So have improved the squad in January, and surprisingly, since Stefano Storaro's been fit, I think he's put in some good performances, and actually offensively, I think he's improved as a player. He's not just this guy that runs around like a headless chicken. So, yeah, for the Grifone supporters, I think they might have some hope. And now that they are just 1 point behind Sump, I think that might inflate their egos.
Yeah, it's getting tasty down there now. You've got to be nervous. But Genoa's defence in particular was so good. Andrea Masiello and Adama Sumauro were fantastic. And it was kind of fitting that they linked up for the first goal. Masiello kind of had a cross-come shot that Sumauro was there to tap inside 6 yards. But before that, they had just basically built a wall on the edge of their box. And Genoa being solid, it's a strange thing. I think this wasn't an actual stat. I kind of looked at it myself, so it's probably wrong. But as far as I could make out, it's the first time they've now kept back-to-back clean sheets in Serie A this season, and they've kept 3 clean sheets of their last 4. The one that they didn't was a 2-2 draw in Bergamo against Atalanta, and look, Atalanta score against everyone, and they still left Bergamo with a point. And Kev, Genoa are very much on the up, and Samp aren't.
Yeah, I think obviously you first got to stop conceding. And when we're calling this sort of a coaching masterclass, it was very clear from Bologna being forced to take shots from just outside the area, just sort of long-range efforts. They were having to resort to that because the defensive unit of Genoa was so strong. And I think Perrin, along with the defence, has something to do with that, now that they've sort of bedded in after he's come back. And then you flip it over to Samp, who I think you put it in the notes before we came on air, and I've got in mind just the letters W, T, and F, and some exclamation marks, because it was just crazy. It wasn't own goals, penalties, another penalty, a soft red. Samp just seemed to implode.
Yeah, they did, and they imploded, Vito, against Fiorentina. It's not like they did this against Inter or Atalanta or Juve or Lazio. Fiorentina scored 5 against Sampdoria. That's troublesome.
Very troublesome. I remember a few weeks ago you asked me after one of the wins, maybe it was after Sampdoria Brescia or another game, but you had asked me if Samp were starting to get back on track or they would be safe now. And then I was saying the old one game at a time cliche, that just got to take it easy until things are a bit more secure. And now it's evident that things are not so secure, that we could be dragged right into the relegation zone. And to have our local rivals 1 point behind us, I think that's one of many necessary wake-up calls.
Yeah, I mean, it is really concerning, and I suppose the only thing that's probably helping you a little bit is that Lecce are only 2 points ahead. So Samp have 23 points, and Torino in 14th only have 27, right? So there's still a lot of teams who are kind of in the mix, but you need to start getting a few more points on the board because Genoa looks solid, and next week, I suppose, right, Genoa play Lazio next. And who do Samp play? Samp play Inter, right? So
Inter at the San Siro.
Yeah, it's not likely that either pick up points in that one.
No.
After that, Genoa go to Milan and Sampdoria host Verona. So there's a possibility for both or at least one to pick up points. Then Sampdoria go to Roma, which will be a big emotional thing for Ranieri. And Genoa play at home to Parma, which on their current form, you wouldn't be surprised if they got 3 points. And it's going to be really, really tight between the two Genovese clubs. And it's not a position you'd like to be in, is it?
Absolutely not. And, well, you have players that are good on their day, but sometimes they have very off days. I mean, Ramirez went from 0 to hero and then back to 0. Emil Dero, he has his moments as a goalkeeper, can make some good saves, but he can also make some really horrible errors too. So particularly on one of the shots, I think it was for Vlahovic's second goal, he parried a shot and it was basically straight to him to tap it in. So, yeah, it's very concerning when your goalkeeper makes those elementary mistakes, and just the defending in general, very open, and it's not good when your defenders don't know how to position themselves or they leave those gaps. And since Ranieri has taken over, one of the things that has improved since the Di Francesco period was the defending. But there have been games like this one here and the Lazio defeat where the defense can still be carved up. This is more embarrassing, though, because we were at home and also because Fiorentina are still finding their feet under Beppe Iacchini, and also with Rocco Commisso as president, they're still trying to build something. So this is why this defeat is worse than the Lazio one, whereas Lazio, they've been together for a few years and they're pushing for the title.
Yeah, serious points aside, Kev, Thorsby's own goal was kind of funny, wasn't it?
It was, but I felt a little for the lad because whoever got it first almost tried to do a back flick out of play and caught him by surprise. So then it sort of bounces off his shin. I would have been apoplectic with rage if someone had done that had made me look a fool.
His response, because the camera obviously.
Oh, Berezinski, Vito.
Berezinski was the attempted back heel, right? Okay, but the camera just zoomed in on his little face, and he looked distraught. Like, oh no, and that was only the beginning. That was only for 1-0.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have been distraught. I would have been raging.
You're an angry man, Kev. That says more about you than little Thorsby. But anyway, Hellas Verona went to Udinese. They drew 0-0, and Milan host Torino on Monday evening. So we can't possibly talk about that, which means we're finished. Believe it or not, are you happy?
I'm happy.
You don't look it.
I'm off to get
relieved.
Sunshine and some Champions League in Spain. So.
Yeah, I'll be off to some sunshine and Champions League in Spain in a month's time as well, which I'm very excited about. But for this week, I'll have to cope with some Champions League at the San Siro. It's not a bad alternative, is it? But yeah, anyway. Do you know what? I think I'm off next Sunday. So what I'm planning on doing is, obviously, when your job is to watch football every week, when you've got a day off, what else would you do other than go and watch football? I think I'm going to go up to Bergamo for Atalanta Sassuolo because I've not been since they opened the new Curva. So I'm going to try and get in up there and report back from the other side of things. Back to the roots, Kev, in the Curva with the Ultras again.
Oh, I thought for a moment then you meant in the Sassuolo end.
I don't know what you're talking about with that. I do. You're trying to make a joke that Dov Schiavone regularly makes and is based on absolutely nothing, but I'm used to it by now. I've developed a thick skin. Thanks, Kev.
Pleasure, Connor.
Thanks, Mr. Doria.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy.
Say goodbye, guys.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.